All right, just adjusting it. Whoop. Oh,
Hey guys, welcome back to Ganza Gaming. In honor of New Game Master Month, I thought I'd introduce you to one of my players. Within the last 2 years, she's already ran two of her own games. But she thought she'd fit the New Game Master category. I kind of disagreed with her level of expertise, but we're here so she can tell you kind of how she got into it. So I'm going to roll back for a second. New Game Master Month is to introduce people to the concept of running their own games, and it's supported by 4 different companies. I'm going to tell you the games that they're basically highlighting during this month because that'll be easier to find on the shelf than the actual game. So we have Numenera, which is basically the grandmama of the Cypher system. Of course, here we have the Cypher Unlimited t-shirt that goes for the Cypher Discord. Check that Discord out. Lots of welcoming people to help you. You can also find things for Unknown Armies, which is a surreal modern fantasy game. Trail of Cthulhu, which is a kind of new take on Cthulhu. And actually, at this point, it's not as new. It's kind of becoming a standard. It's awesome. And also Seventh Sea, which is kind of magic meets the Three Musketeers. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just switch over here where you can see my player slash, at the moment, she's my game master, Victoria Morel. And, we're just going to start off with what got you curious about the role-playing hobby and to give it a try?
Well, okay. Well, fantasy genre in general had always been, something I've been into and I've been drawn to, thanks to my favorite book series and movie series, which is Lord of the Rings. But D&D or any kind of RPG tabletop has never been something I wanted to get into or wasn't enough to really draw me in. But anytime it came up in conversation, I was like, I kind of want to try it out. Let me see where this goes. But there was never a group to play with. So we actually have someone that is I guess a mutual friend that brought us into, suggesting let's start our own game. And I finally said, sure, why not? And day one was the day that, was just like, this is awesome. This is a lot of fun. I get to be an entirely different person. And the story was fantastic. It was not Dungeons and Dragons, though. It was Cypher. But yeah, it was just interesting to be able to just improvise, be someone else, and just get lost in a story. Do your own thing. And the fact that you can literally almost do anything, rules permitting, maybe, that you could just be, whatever you want to be. It really was a lot of fun. And it's just like, I can't wait for the next story or where the story progresses to.
Okay, so I'm gonna hide my blushing face because that was your first. I was your first game master that first day.
Yeah.
So I'm very flattered. I didn't know it was that huge of an impression. I just you guys kept coming back, so woohoo! And we had another question. How was your first session? How did it get you hooked? And we covered that just right here with your introduction.
Yeah.
Right. So. You continued on. It was great. So, what was kind of your favorite moment when you were playing the game?
My first game?
No,
ever?
Just ever.
Or any game.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many.
Bright answer.
I mean, it's hard to pick one because I guess I have one when I was a game master that my players decided to be ludicrous, and then there's another that a character of mine did that I was just like, I'm happy with how this turned out. So I got 2 stories then.
Oh, well, tell us both. Either
so
order.
The first one was my first campaign against Cypher System, and I had my players pretty much have to travel over what I called the Sand Sea to get to their destination, which is just a massive desert. And they were able to get in this Mad Max-style vehicle to cross. And what started out as a normal leisure drive, so far not so bad, anyone who was perceptive enough was able to notice that the sand started to create little mounds, and it was very obvious these large monsters underneath the sand were either following them at equal speed, if not faster. Eventually, I revealed that they were massive sandworms that would consume their entire car if it wanted to. In my mind, I was here thinking, this is meaty enough where it will consume a big chunk of tonight's session. It's going to be a nice challenging moment for them. I'm excited. It's the biggest monster I can really throw at them at the moment. And sure enough, one of my players was a dwarf who didn't use any weapons. I can't remember exactly what it's called. I think it's, do you remember that type of class?
It was a more...
No weapons or something like that.
He needs no weapons is his focus.
Needs no weapons. And they created a cannon specifically for the dwarf. So it was a dwarf cannon, and launched him into the mouth of that one of the worms, and he just breaks right through, killing it immediately. And I'm just like, this, okay. And I that was when I first realized you can't, no matter how much of the word master is in Game Master, you are not the master. You're not. They are. You have a story, and they will take it, crumple it up, and throw it away. And so, but that was just too ludicrous for me to hate them, because it was a great moment. It's like, well, there goes my monsters that I had so much faith in.
So what you're trying to say is, I have this wonderful story planned, and then my players turn it into a beautiful butterfly mutant that's just even cooler.
Pretty much, yeah. And at least they had fun. That was the important part. Now, the second story, which is a character, my character, and it was the last D&D game we played. Funny enough, the player who was the dwarf, this is now his campaign. And now I'm a dwarf in this one. A dwarven bard. And I guess what we needed to do in that moment was to infiltrate a castle, to sneak into this castle, to get in, but we needed to distract the guards. And I, being a dwarven bard, volunteered to be the distraction, along with another player who eventually left my side to join in the infiltration. So we walked to the two guards and reenacted the Lion King scene where Timon and Pumbaa were doing the little luau song, and I was dressed as a pig, going the yup, yup, yup bits. And that was enough of a distraction for all of 10 seconds. And they were like, so what else do you do? And I was like, okay. So I rolled and tried to see if I can continue distraction, and I started this whole Cuban Pete conga, whatever it's called, and managed to lure not only these two guards, but the entire town into the town square for a block party. And that continued on for I don't know how many rounds, or how many, the story, literally the entire session of that night was me throwing a block party for this town.
It was.
In a pig costume. And I had fun grabbing, music off my phone. And every time our GM was like, okay, what's going on your side of the story? And you just hear music playing and the entire people doing the 1-2 step or the conga slide or whatever, just some kind of dance. And at one point, whenever you guys went back to what's going on your end, I muffled the music as if you can hear it in the background. And of course, the big bad guy shows up, and I have to leave the area, and I stage dive off of my platform with my little block party. They carried me away, jumped out of my costume, and successfully snuck away. Best bard moment ever. My favorite to this day.
So remember, bards, your secret is pig costumes.
Pig costumes.
Pig costumes. So after that, what kind of gave you the kind of the itch to actually run your own game? What was how did it tempt you, and where did you kind of go from there to get the ball rolling?
I was very curious to see what it would be like to just kind of create the story and go for it, but never had the courage to, or at the time didn't have the courage to just be like, I'm going to run a game. But what I like to do, and it's especially with writing stories in general, because I write on the side, I would listen to music, and any kind of epic drama music, or if you know of epic or epica soundtracks, usually for movie trailers and such. Two Steps from Hell is one. Globus is another. Intermediate Music, I believe, is a third another band or group album. But it was Two Steps from Hell, and I was listening to one album, and I want to say it's Sky something. I'm going to have to look that up later. Regardless, Two Steps from Hell. But every track just kind of started painting a story in my mind, and I was able to piece together this, I guess, Final Fantasy-esqueness, because it was fantasy, but it was sci-fi at the same time. And I was thinking this could be a really cool campaign, and decided to announce I'm calling the next one. That's it. I'm just like, we're finishing this one up. I mean, we got a long way to go, but I'm like, I call next. I want to try. And sure enough, everyone had, at least they told me, they had a good time playing it. You were actually one of the players in that campaign.
And just for a little context, I had been running my Cypher fantasy game, which is Solar Sails, which may be a name that will come up later in the year. We'll see. And it was a Cypher system, and you were actually our first GM after me, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was just right after. I mean, your session went on for a while. I mean, we were there for 8 months, I'm going to say. I mean, it felt like a very long time. And we were actually drawing in all of our friends and different people, and we eventually formed our own little player group. That is, like, now my second family.
Oh, thank you.
There you go. Yeah.
So, and then, when you actually got to Gamemaster, what were kind of the expectation? What expectations did you have? And we already mentioned you had one surprise, but were there any other surprises you had?
It is not as hard as you think it is. I mean, it's just, yeah, sure, the difficult part is coming up with a story that's intriguing enough, but your players end up making the story for you. As long as you have a point A and a point B, it's pretty much this is where you start, this is where you finish, and you just throw in a few things in the middle. You have a game. And you just, over time, you get better and better, and you actually know what to expect from your players. Because, like I had mentioned before, you can create this elaborate plan that is, in a way, linear, and I feel we want to avoid making the game linear, because it takes away their options. It takes away their creativity from it. But as soon as you force it to be linear, they either will get bored of it, or, like I said, take it, crumple it up, and throw it away, and change your story completely. And it is never, I mean, it depends on your group, I suppose, but my group, definitely not. You cannot have a serious session.
What? We're not serious at the table? I don't know what you're talking about.
It's like all our banter, it's a comedy. It is a tragic comedy. But it's never a serious, dramatic, epic story. You think you get Lord of the Rings, but you're really getting Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
With, like, Lord of the Rings sprinkled in there.
Yeah, every now and then we have our epic moments, and we're proud of it. Especially when you get that nat 20 and you kill the monster. It's a good feeling.
So when you first started out, what were some of the things your players did to kind of help you over that hump of that first few sessions where you were, like, battling with a little bit of your confidence in doing something that you hadn't done before?
Just seeing them laughing and smiling is one, because it's just a little flag for me saying, hey, they're having a good time. You're doing it right. And the second is not, allow them to give you feedback. It's okay for them to tell you at the end of the session if they're not liking a certain thing or they feel it could be this way, and it helps you improve, because what's better to get the feedback from your players. You can ask another GM, which I do all the time, what do you think? What could I do differently? And they'll give you their, words of wisdom from their experiences. But your target are your players. And your players need to be able to either have a good time or really feel their characters and make sure they're immersed. And, as long as they feel that they're a part of the story, you're doing it right. And just ask them, if this is your first session, finish your first session and just say, what do you guys think? What could I do differently? Or what would you expect me to do differently or better? And they'll respond. Especially if they're like your true friends, they will tell you. Instead of being nice and saying like, yeah, sure, it was fun. And you can tell they're not having a good time. So
Cool. Also, I know that in getting into the role playing and also looking over at the wargaming stuff that just happens to be kind of there in the corner of the store, you actually kind of branched out into your own little side gig.
yeah, I did. Um, so aside from, if you were to have a map during any kind of role-playing game and you have your little miniature figurines and they represent you, my first set of figurines were actually yours.
This is true. This is true.
Or I forgot the game. Guild Ball?
Yeah.
Was it was Guild Ball?
Guild Ball.
But it was fun and relaxing and very therapeutic for me to paint the figurines and make them, come to life, essentially. They go from these gray or white or metal pieces to colorful characters. And it slowly developed into different people with their pieces from many games, Warhammer, Guild Ball, even, their own character for a D&D or RPG campaign. And to make it match what they want it to be, it's really cool. And I know that I kind of have a natural knack for it, I guess. I don't know. I like it. But now I have a little small business where I paint your figures. If you have a collection of them or even just one figure that you want him or her to be, a certain way, I do it for you. And there's actually, I don't know if I can bring them down here. Aside from miniatures, I have large figurines too that I can paint as well. This guy still needs to be picked up. He's been with me for too long. But
Oh, so that's not like a sideshow statuette? That was painted by you?
yeah, that's me.
Put it in front of the camera again
actually,
because that was pretty cool, if you could.
It's actually 3D printed. I don't know who printed
Oh, it's
it.
a 3D print that you... Wow.
I don't know if we can
Holy
get a
crap.
good look at him.
Good job.
You can get better pictures aside from what we're seeing now on my Instagram. So I'm
I'll
going
tell
to
you
flex
what,
there
I
a little
will,
bit.
in the show notes, i.e. down in the bottom of the notes for the YouTube, I'll have, a list for, so they can see your Instagram. That's also probably where, just, for you guys to know, how many more no's can I put in there, right? The PDFs that I do for Cypher. Because I'm Ganza Gaming, and, quite a few of those PDFs that are in community content were produced by me. And they have 5 stars, and they're, brass, silver, and electrum sellers. So proud about that. So is there anything you want us to wrap up with? Any other thoughts about game mastering, especially for people that are, just dipping in their toes for the first time?
Just have fun, really. Just have fun with it. Because once it starts to unfold and you play with your players, you may have this one story in mind, but then you get really good at improvisation, that word. And you end up being one of the players in your own story, really, and it's just all your NPCs and such, but it's a lot of fun. Just go for it. If you keep getting that itch, that want to do it, but there's always that inner voice that's saying you're not good enough or you can't, ignore it and just go for it. You'll develop the skills naturally as you go, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
And Cypher and Numenera, by extension, seems to be very welcoming to doing that style, especially improv. I think, anyway.
Right. No, definitely, 100%. Because it's just rules, and they're very simple rules to just... I don't know. If you remember when you were a kid and you played pretend, and you have that one kid that's like, well, I have invincibility. And then what can you do? Now they're invincible and the game's over. That's what the rules are supposed to do, is prevent that from happening.
I have a force field.
It's like, I'm super strong. I'm too fast. You can't get me. No. The rules just help prevent that from happening, and then you're just playing really adult pretend.
But the fun
I
kind.
suppose.
Or they all, I guess adult pretend would be fun no matter what you're doing. All right, so thank you again, Vicki. I greatly appreciate it. And I look forward to our next session where you're running 5e. We're out of time. Otherwise, I'd be like, hey, we want to get into like 5e versus Cypher. We can save that for another time.
Yes.
So you have a great day, and thank you again.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.